Talking financial organization and a professional practice does not have to be boring. Are you ready for a few money in, money out ideas? It's Susan Gunn coming directly to your head to make you think. Can you handle the truth? Because she is known for being energetic, laughs a lot, and gives honest, sometimes direct, but always practical advice. It's time now for Money In, Money Out.
Welcome back to another episode of In the Embezzlement News. Janice and I are back at the table together again to bring you some headliner cases. Say hi, Janice.
Hey, everybody.
Janice and I just thought I'd qualify. Janice and I are certified fraud examiners that deep dive into financial software and institutions, culling embezzlement evidence, say that 10 times, primarily in dental practices. And though we are experts in this field, we will not discuss our cases. This is a public broadcast, as you can imagine, available on every podcast network with a wide audience. So it's entirely important to both of us that we not train anyone to embezzle or commit fraud. Having said that, the goal of these episodes is not to bring you information on how to commit fraud, but to bring you the headlines of those that have, in quotes, allegedly committed fraud. These individuals or groups believed that they could get something for nothing or very little. They believed the cost of having whatever they wanted outweighed the cost of getting caught. In fact, most of them have acted in such a way that they believe they would not get caught. That's the similarity between these headliner cases and what Janice and I see on a daily basis. Most of our headlines come from the Department of Justice press releases, and today's headlines include those, drum roll please, those who have committed insurance fraud. As you'll hear about in these cases, there's so many ways to commit insurance fraud. That's not really comforting, right? And you wonder why your insurance cost is so high for everything? Well, this is one reason why. It's not always what you think. It doesn't happen the same way. So, Janice, why don't you go ahead and introduce our first case?
Yeah, so our first one is we had 4 people that were defrauding Amtrak. And so it involves 3 men. We've got Mohammed Mirza. These names are not going to be easy for me to pronounce, just so you all know.
Don't. Just say 3. Just say okay, 3 men.
Got 3 men and 1 woman. And so what they were doing was they were getting information from patients or employees that worked for Amtrak, and then they were sending fraudulent claims in for these patients. They're charged on 15 counts of healthcare fraud.
Wow, 15.
15. So this happened June 23rd that they were charged in New Jersey. They were released shortly after on $200,000 bond, unsecured bond. But it all started in 2019, and it's been going up until now. And they've been recruiting Amtrak employees, mostly from New York and New Jersey. And then what they were doing is offering these employees cash to use their personal information and to
file the claims.
Yeah, and to file the claims to Amtrak's healthcare.
So how did they get caught? Do you remember?
I don't remember how they got.
So let me tell you that part. Remember that? They had an undercover law enforcement agent.
That's right. Yeah. I've got that. So that's right. This one was the one with the undercover agent, where this guy went into one of their offices, the lady's office in New York, and this lady had him sign his name about 30 times for services received. Yeah. But then told him not to put any dates on those signatures. So that happened in June of 2021. And there were 7 claims filed for May of 2021. And then over the course of that time, there were 73 claims filed for that one person for that undercover agent,
Wow.
paying out $31,840.
Yeah, it's interesting because two of them were in New Jersey, and yet the charges were filed in New Jersey. One was in New York, and one was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where. I don't,
Probably
I don't,
pretty close to each other, proximity-wise.
probably. But Amtrak paid out at least $9 million on these fraudulent claims.
Oh,
Isn't that crazy?
wow.
Yeah,
And is Amtrak self-funded? I think they are, aren't they?
they must be, because it didn't say going through like Aetna
Yeah, Blue
or
Cross
anything
Blue
like
Shield.
that.
Yeah.
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 So, but each of those charges, those healthcare charges, fraud charges, carry a $250,000 fine and 10 years in prison, or twice the gross gain or loss from the offense, whichever one is greater. So, yeah. So $9 million. Yowza.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have how many sentences? I mean, how many?
15 charges against
15.
them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Well,
that's
they'll be
crazy.
serving some time. That's a little encouraging. And it's interesting to me that they could do this over, how long was it going on?
It was just since 2019. So, I mean, that's
So it really wasn't
$9
that
million.
long.
No, not for $9 million. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
That is a chunk of change.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I want to know what they spent $9 million on. Well, part of it went to the people they paid, right?
Right. So they would pay, like that undercover agent got $1,000 in cash. He went back to the office. He was there first in June, went back to the office in July and got his payment then. And he received $1,000 in an envelope.
So it was cash.
Yeah. Yep.
They didn't have a check.
No. No check. No check for you.
Yeah. Oh, and it said that they got it recorded on video, audio and video.
Right. Yes.
Kind of
yeah.
hard to deny that evidence, right?
It sure is.
Wow, 9 million. And again,
9 million.
we wonder
Why
our insurance is so high. Yeah.
It's so sad.
And that's only in 2 years.
I know. That's what's scary.
So the people that they filed the insurance claims for that sold their information, I wonder if they're going to be prosecuted.
I wonder that too. I guess it'll depend on how much they filed on each one of theirs. I don't know.
Well, so this was a press release on June 23rd. And by the way, we'll put all the links to the DOJ's press releases in the show notes for the podcast. So if you're interested in reading it, there will probably be, I'm sure, more charges to come. 9 million is a chunk of change.
Right.
And so it would be hard for me to understand that there are only 4. But can you imagine? So let's put that hat on for a minute. Can you imagine being one of those Amtrak employees that sold your information for fraudulent means just to get $1,000?
I know.
Probably a little nervous.
Probably. I would think.
Wondering if you're going to get a knock on the door.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. So the second case we're going to talk about is a little bit somewhat kind of related to the first one, at least in the underlying lie. This time it involved defrauding automobile insurance companies, another type of insurance. But this one conviction involved a 38-year-old Minnesota man who solicited car accident victims to get treatment at fraudulently involved clinics. What was fascinating about this case was that there were 26 other individuals charged in 7 chiropractic clinics in this scheme. 24 have pled guilty or have been found guilty. The press release was just about this one 38-year-old. But here's the deal. Here's what I could imagine based on, again, our own fraudsters' behavior that Janice and I both have had. They're conducting their day-to-day, believing that they're still in the clear, right? The fraudsters, they weren't the ones arrested. No one is suspect to them. That surely it's not going to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, who knows if they have everyone, right? So then the FBI starts picking them off one by one, making the ones that had not been picked up sweat it out, right? Don't you know they're sweating it out?
Exactly.
Never knowing if they're going to be arrested next or not. In fact, who knows when the FBI is finished arresting everyone? It's not like they put out a press release and say, "Okay, we're finished arresting everyone
We're
that's
done
involved
now."
with this case."
Right.
Yeah. Just to let you know, if you committed part of this fraud, you're in the clear now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not going to do that.
No. But that's the way investigations are handled. In fact, our investigations are covert.
Right.
Until the evidence we've compiled is handed over to whatever law enforcement is handling it. Sometimes the police department, sometimes the FBI, sometimes the State Department. They don't know. Nobody knows. All the while, the fraudsters, or in our case, the embezzlers, believe they're getting away with it.
Right. And a lot of times, I know for you and I, Susan, it takes a long time for the cases to actually be prosecuted. So it can be years.
So don't you know, there were some listeners that just got really nervous,
I know.
Janice.
I know. I was just thinking that too. Oops. You're not in the clear yet. No, I mean, oops for them. They're not in the clear yet.
Yeah, they're not in the clear at all.
No.
Not at all. All right. Well, so why don't you bring up the next case?
Yeah, so the next one is a dentist, actually, in Chicago. And shame on him. I mean, he is charged with wire fraud, which holds up to 20 years. It's punishable by 20 years in federal prison. This guy was from 2015 to 2016. In those 2 years. 2 years. He submitted fraudulent applications to a lending company. So, like we deal with Care Credit and Lending Club and those. It sounds like one of those.
I was wondering, just to let you know.
I know, if it was somebody we knew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I put out some feelers. I didn't get any information back.
Didn't you? Yeah.
No.
So he knew, I mean, that he wasn't going to perform services on these patients, or the services that he did perform, he inflated. Sometimes he would increase that loan amount, saying that he was going to do more, that they needed more dental work than what they actually got. And then he would pay those patients as well. So he received 1.2 million.
I was going to say, wow.
Yes. And then he allegedly paid some of that to those patients, and then anybody that would recruit people to apply for those applications.
So he used recruiters too.
Yeah. So I don't know how much it didn't say how much he paid out to the patients or to the recruiters, but he used some of that 1.2. So he didn't get all of that 1.2 million,
He only got his net profit.
Yes, exactly.
So I kind of think the Amtrak one also used recruiters.
They did, yes.
Back. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, they did.
So in order to commit fraud like this, you have to use recruiters.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a trend.
You got to find people.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me. It's not like he got a loan from the lending company, or hang on a minute. So let's just take Care Credit because we know them.
Right.
Care Credit goes in and funds a patient's treatment. Let's say $5,000. That patient's going to have to pay back that $5,000.
Well, that's what I'm wondering too. Did these patients then just default on the loans?
Well, that would hurt them more than what they'd ever get paid for.
Well,
not only that, but in order for the practice to carry somebody like Care Credit, it cost the practice about 9%
Yeah, but they're still getting funded. They're just not getting that 9%. So like if they say $1,000, they're just not getting funded that $90. So it's not like they're getting charged a fee.
I'm kind of thinking it must have been a company that's not Care Credit
It might be.
or Lending Club
Yeah,
because they operate the same.
right. Yeah, it didn't say what the lending
Yeah.
company was. So
1.2 million though, that's a pretty big one.
that's a lot.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Because in order for our listeners to understand that, if you as a patient go into a dental practice and you use Care Credit, then it's just like a credit card for you. You have to pay that back. And if you get 0% interest, which, is a really big draw
Right.
if you're having lots of big treatment done, then you have to pay that back in a certain period of time. So it's a great deal for you, but it costs the doctor to be able to offer you that plan, especially those 0% interest.
Right.
And so I'm not sure where that worked.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out either because and for those patients, I'm like, so did they just default on the loan? So did
Yeah.
you get people that didn't care about their credit?
And is that how they found out?
That could be.
If
Yeah,
that's how
because
he
maybe
got-
it was like a lot of people that were going to his office weren't paying back or something.
So it always amazes me. He's 58 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The Amtrak one was a chiropractic clinic and physical therapy clinic.
Yeah, and they were late 40s, early 50s too.
Right.
One
and,
was
and
55.
you do this, and this guy's 58.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone to dental school.
Right.
You know what the ethics bind you by. And yes, the last couple of years have been bad, but I that blows me away.
I know. All that schooling and all of that to just throw it away like that. Sad.
So anytime someone commits a fraud or embezzles, there is a wider stream of victims than just the one that's embezzled from or defrauded. And so if you look at this dentist or the Amtrak people, or the other one I just talked about, every single one of those individuals, this dentist is the charge is punishable up to 20 years.
Right. Right.
So he could die in jail.
He could.
78.
Yeah.
He probably won't get 20 years, but
Probably not, but still.
But they don't think. They just never think they're going to get caught.
Right.
Isn't it bewildering?
Yeah.
That you can commit this and time again, and greed overrides active thought process.
Right.
They just don't think. Think
No.
it through. What is the end desired result, and what is really going to happen in the end with someone going to jail?
Yes.
It amazes me.
Well, and like you said, it's not just that one person that's affected. I mean, and that's, when you hear about insurance fraud, it comes back on all of us because now we all have to pay more on our insurance premiums and that because there's so much fraud out there. It's just sad that it happens that way.
Well, and that leads into the next case I was going to talk about. This Michigan doctor that pled guilty for services that she didn't perform.
Right.
You just kind of go, okay, as if you would never get caught.
Right.
The doctor admitted to billing for patient office visits. Get a load of this. While she was on vacation. She was completely out of state.
It's unreal.
It's like, what are you thinking, people?
Yeah.
And she was outside the office sometimes when she was performing other services. During those times when they billed for patient visits, the patients met with unlicensed, unqualified people.
Right.
Like the front desk person
Right.
or the assistant.
Yeah.
They weren't qualified.
Or license. The assistant might have a license, but, certification, but no, you can't do that without a dentist or doctor
No, the
present.
provider is the one you have to bill under.
Yes.
And so she billed Medicare, Medicaid, that'll get you into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare, Medicaid, and Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yep.
Now, those are the only ones that it said in the DOJ, but I'm not sure if she fraudulently billed Medicare, Medicaid, and BCBS, there had to have been other insurances that she
Yes.
fraudulently billed.
I'm sure.
I'm sure it was not limited to those three.
No, I would not think. Because if you would do the ones for the government, you would think you wouldn't be.
No kidding. If you're willing to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, well. And not only that, she wrote controlled substance prescriptions to patients without any medical purpose.
Right.
So apparently she was a sometimes in the office drug dealer.
Yes, indeed.
Interesting to me, she did plead guilty to one count of healthcare fraud. I was trying to figure out why it was only one count, but she will be sentenced in September. The maximum sentence for that one count is 10 years. There was no word. I tried, I looked, kind of did a deep dive. I was wondering if her medical license was being revoked.
I'm sure it will be.
Well, she did surrender her DEA license in
Yeah.
light of her in-office drug dealing.
If nothing else, I would think she'd be suspended. I mean, she's going to be in jail for a little while anyway, probably.
Well, at least we know what job she'll be doing. what area of the prison she'll be working.
Right, no kidding.
If she actually gets any in prison time. So I really liked one of the quotes from the FBI agents. The charges, quote, the charges to which she pled guilty describe a person who was more motivated by greed than her duty to provide appropriate medical care to patients, end quote. I bring it back every single time. It is greed. Every single time. As certified fraud examiners, Janice and I are very well knowledged about the fraud triangle and how it's opportunity and that there's lots of reasons, and they talk about that, but every single one of my cases has been about greed. It's greed.
Yeah.
Greed in all of these.
Sure.
I mean, they think they need the money, but they don't.
It's always, right. It's always greed. That's what, even if it's need out of necessity, it then turns into greed after that. You may need it at this point, but then when they get away with it, then they keep going with the greed mindset,
When I was growing up, if we needed something and we didn't have it, then we just did without.
Yeah, that's the way.
I mean, as long as you could pay the bills, the electric bill, the gas bill, put food on the table, those are needs.
Right.
The Lamborghini that we've talked about before, the Jaguars.
Well, and a lot of ours have come up with, they may need it because they can't pay their bills, but that's because they gambled or because they were into drugs or something like that. Yeah. So it still comes back to greed no matter what.
Yeah, I will tell you, I have one of my presentations is unrelenting greed. And unrelenting greed gets people in trouble every time. Yeah. And sometimes I think we should rename this podcast.
Probably.
There is one of my favorite podcasts already called American Greed. So they have, oh my gosh, don't they have an abundance of material to talk about?
They sure do. Yes.
It's amazing.
Yep.
It is amazing. Well, it's sad. That's a sad indictment.
It is sad.
Well, the next one kind of caught both of our attentions the same day the headline hit the news.
Yes, it did.
I sent a text to you and said, "Oh my gosh, we have to talk about this."
And that's how
She
these
texted,
other ones, how we came up with these other ones was we were like, okay, now let's deep dive. All right.
yeah, I know. Again, we'll always have material too, right?
Yes, indeed.
So here's the headline.
U.S. attorney announces charges against a doctor, dentist, a former NBA player for defrauding the NBA player's health and welfare benefit plan.
Doesn't that sound like the lead of a joke? There was a doctor, dentist, and a former NBA player that walked into a bar.
I know. I was like, wow, that's a lot of people there that don't go together usually.
I bet they wish they had only walked into a bar, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
And they probably have since then, or maybe during.
Several times.
So this fraud scheme, you may have heard about it already, but the doctor and the dentist, again, kind of in line with what we've talked about, provided false claims to NBA players to file to the NBA players' health and welfare benefit plan for reimbursement. And so they are self-funded, what's called self-funded. And the doctor and the dentist provide false claims. Oddly, what's really weird, it was kind of like a pyramid scheme.
It did sound like that, yeah. Kind of like the other ones too. It's like they all kind of went up, They had recruiters, then they had patients that they paid, and then
You got paid more the farther up the chain
I
you
think
were.
so, yeah.
So one NBA player created the idea. Then he recruited the others. There were 3 main NBA players that recruited fraud participants who then paid the 3 recruiters. One of the recruiters obtained, they said, $350,000. Isn't that incredible? That's a pretty good recruiter. Not
Yes.
your typical NBA player recruiter, by the way.
Right. This was for fraud, not for playing basketball.
Right. No kidding. Yeah, and that makes it a little bit harder for me to wrap my head around because they're professional players.
And they make good money already.
Well, I will tell you, none of these are standout players.
I know, but still.
I looked them up. In fact, most of them are former NBA players. Some of them are assistants on some of the teams now.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the major conspirators was, I guess probably not now,
Right.
a conspirator. But the next part kind of sounds a little bit like the Chrisleys, didn't you think?
Yes.
By the way, if you've not listened to that podcast, I recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. That was a fun one.
Oh, that was a fun one. Sometimes the benefit plan, the more that they submitted these claims, sometimes the benefit plan required an official document stating that the services that provided were truly medically necessary. That's pretty standard.
Right.
That happens all the time. Well, that requirement, however, does not stop someone from getting what they want. At the most, it probably shot a cannon of raised red flags. I mean, it was like, whoa,
Yep.
just doing this. Well, so the original creator of this fraud scheme, not a physician or a dentist, but an NBA player, he does have a college degree, fraudulently created and sent the medical necessity letters for the 3 recruiters. One of them also strongly encouraged one conspirator to submit a forged letter. Okay, there should have been an editor or somebody. They should have put in this chain of command, they should have had an editor listed in there.
I'm telling you.
Because that letter that they encouraged the co-conspirator to submit had, according to the DOJ, it wasn't on letterhead. That was the first giveaway.
Right.
It had unusual formatting. It had grammatical errors.
That's what kills me. The
Oh
grammatical
yeah, no
errors.
kid. I don't get it. Everything's underlined when it's misspelled.
Right.
And one of the letters, get a load of this. One of the letters misspelled a patient's name.
Yep.
Not real smart.
No, not so much.
Greed Greed does not require intelligence, does it?
No, it does not.
It's not linked to intelligence.
No.
Not at all. Well, that was pretty bad, but 19 individuals were charged with one count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud, with a maximum sentence of each one of them of 20 years. 19.
I know, that's a lot.
The benefit plan estimates it lost at least $5 million. So
less than the Amtrak one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a shorter period of time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how long this
think
one was. I don't remember.
3 years.
Okay, so it's about the same amount.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is everybody has met, especially insurance companies, they monitor claim submissions really heavily. And they'll see when they start having an uptick of claims.
Right.
And so this had to produce an uptick on the number of claims as well as the dollar volume. And all of a sudden they had a spike. And I'm sure Amtrak too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, an uptick in these claims. So thinking that not only from this one area, from these two doctors, the doctor and the dentist, and I did read in one of them that the dentist didn't necessarily want to go along with it, but then he got kind of scared.
Uh-huh.
But I got on the web, you know, the mighty, mighty web, you know, where everything's true.
Right. Yes, of course.
To dig a little deeper. We might have to change our joke intro, just FYI. Now it should be, there was a doctor, dentist, former NBA player, and a chiropractor that walked into a bar. Remember what I said about one of the cases that we had already talked about how the FBI isn't always finished?
Right.
Well, the FBI was not finished in this case, but was wrapping up loose ends, and this chiropractor was charged with $1.3 million fraud with the same group of fraudsters. So when everybody else was charged, he was probably sitting back going, okay, they didn't get me.
Right.
Yeah, maybe they didn't know it was me. I'm not going to be doing this.
I got to pass on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if he stopped.
I wonder.
He was charged with charging the benefit plan's debit cards for services not rendered and keeping 33% of the proceeds, a third. So what's interesting to me is the chiropractor, he was charged with the $1.3 million, and he had to forfeit $429,000 to begin repaying that $1.3.
Yeah.
Only $871,000 to go.
Wow.
Seriously. What are these professionals thinking? And when I say professionals, I'm not talking about the NBA stars.
No.
I mean, it just boggles me, the choices. So when we hear about bad choices that dentists make,
yeah,
we just shake our head and say, seriously, you got to stop.
Right.
You will get caught. You will get caught.
Eventually it happens.
It does happen. You will get caught. These professionals extended their education by many years and had to sweat through studying, through vigorous exams, and now face the potential maximum prison sentence of 10 years and losing their hard-earned licenses because of bad choices.
Indeed.
Unbelievable. And maybe they made a bad choice one day. This is the way I explain it again in the embezzlement presentations. they made a bad choice one day and they didn't get caught. And so maybe the next time they are presented with making a good choice or a bad choice, and they go, well, didn't get caught the first time.
Right.
Let me go ahead and do it this time.
Yep.
And so they do it again. And it's not a joke as much as we joke about it, but it's not a joke.
Not at all.
I don't get how they commit the frauds and simply believe they will never get caught.
I don't either. And can you sleep at night? How do they sleep? I don't know.
In their horsehair beds.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I know. I just, Bernie Madoff, man, perpetuated his Ponzi fraud for about 38 years, they say. 38 years. He got away with it for 38 years, but he didn't get away with it forever.
Right.
$64.8 billion.
And he thought he was in the clear 38 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and pretty organized.
Right.
But he did get caught. So just if you're a listener and you want to read a good book, Harry Markopoulos's book, No One Would Listen, is amazing.
It's so
I
good.
strongly suggest you read it. Yeah, it is a really good read. And it walks the reader through some details that will truly wrench your heart. Harry is a certified fraud examiner like Janice and I, but he's at a much higher quant level.
Yes.
I will tell
I
you.
couldn't understand the things he understands for sure.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes when he was explaining these things, I would just kind of cock my head, and I have a pretty good understanding, but I would be reminded of Plato's quote, I know that I know nothing.
Right.
Because that's exactly the way I felt. But, Harry figured out that Bernie was lying 10 years before the SEC arrested him.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It really is.
But 38 years and he still got caught.
Indeed.
So, we have some takeaways. What do you think the takeaways, I'll ask the listeners, would be from this podcast? Do you think they'll answer? Here's the takeaway. What's the first one, Janice?
If you're a fraudster, you're going to get caught. Though, we have never seen anyone get caught by having someone asking questions. We can only hope that if you're listening, that you'll stop doing it. Please stop. If you are, come clean about it. If you can do that, then maybe you can have some repentance there.
Or repay the money without having it being prosecuted.
Exactly.
I would say most doctors would rather have that than go to trial.
Absolutely.
For something that happened in their practice. And so if you are feeling very guilty about an embezzlement that you're doing in your practice, or if you're a doctor and you're doing something wrong, filing fraudulent claims as a part of another scheme, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Because the people around you see what's going on. You think you've got them fooled, but your family knows something's going on. And after you're caught, it sets a tone for your family that's not good.
Right.
In fact, most of these cases will end up in divorce if you're married.
Yeah, it's sad. Very sad. There's many prices that you have to pay when these things happen. So
yeah, kids is a big price.
Absolutely.
The second of the four takeaways, if it sounds too good to be true, then guess what? It is. It's too good to be true.
Yes.
Use common sense that the good Lord gave you. Seriously, think through your choices. You don't get something for nothing. Buying watches out of a trunk means they won't last long.
Right.
Knockoff purses aren't sold from, the real Coach purses are not sold from somebody's trunk.
Right.
And if they are, then you're buying stolen goods, which also isn't good. So if it sounds too good to be true, then it's too good to be true.
Sure is.
So Janice, how about number 3?
Our third one is greed is not a good reason to steal from anyone. And, even if you consider the one that you're stealing from to have deep pockets, that's a lot of times we hear that with the dental offices. Well, they've got so much
Look
money.
at the car they drive to the practice.
Right. Or they've got a lake house. They've got this. Well, okay, but that doesn't mean you get to steal from them. That it doesn't mean that you're any better for stealing. It's
Yeah, it
still
also means
stealing.
they went to school for how long?
Exactly.
And they had how much school debt?
Right. Stealing is stealing. And it's greed. Nothing else to say about that.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we've hit it on the greed. But,
Yeah.
all of these cases, complete greed based.
Right.
So the fourth one we leave you with, this is a big one too, by the way. If others around you are encouraging you to be dishonest in any way, you need to hang around different people. You need to find another group of people, another group of colleagues to be around. If I was hanging around these NBA players and, like I would, if you know me, I'm like 5'3", and I would not be hanging around NBA players. It'd be
I would like to see it, though. They're like twice as tall as both of us. It'd be me and you I'd be on your shoulders.
I know, no kidding. And they'd still be taller.
Right.
But if you're hanging around people that are committing fraud or doing something dishonest or talking about doing something dishonest, those aren't the people that you need to hang around. I'll never forget this gal that worked in an office that I did before I started my own business, corporation. And she said she was going to sue LA Fitness because she slipped outside. And I said, why are you going to sue LA Fitness when you slipped outside? She goes, well, the sidewalk was wet. I said, what? Why was the sidewalk wet? And she said, because it rained. And I said, why are you going to sue LA Fitness? You should sue God.
Right.
He's the one that made it rain. And I said, well, were you injured? And she said, I hurt my pinky. And I said, well, when was this? She said, last week. And I said, oh, but here you are sitting at the computer typing.
Unreal.
With no bandages or anything on them. And she said, she kind of looked at me like I wasn't supporting her and she was really frustrated with me. And I said, who is telling you to sue LA Fitness? And she said, my boyfriend's family. I looked at her and I said, you're not going to like what I say next. And she said, what? And I said, you need to find a new boyfriend.
No kidding.
I said, that is really bad advice. And you don't want to go down that road. I said, basically, you're lying. And she said, yeah, but I could get money. And I said, that's not how you get money.
Wow.
It was just a mentality of a group of people that could sue. Yep. So then I had to tell her, just to let you know, if you sue and I hear about it, I'll call them and tell them I'll testify. I wasn't a very nice boss.
Oh, too funny.
That was, I thought it was interesting that she told me. She never told me about anything else after that.
Yeah, she kept that to herself.
Yeah. I do think she broke up with her boyfriend, but it wasn't about that. Sadly. Should have been.
Right.
But seriously, if you're hanging around people that are not honest, you need to hang around different people. Start not listening to them, or at least evaluate why they're telling you certain things. You need to hang around people that are truthful. Well, listeners have told us that their favorite podcasts are In the Embezzlement News. And so you guys have spoken. We are listening. So you need to stay tuned. Janice and I have a whole lot of headlines to talk about.
We do.
We've got a we've got a big bucket, and we've got some more ideas, more than we ever have time to record. Because we are still working.
Right.
But most definitely, we will do our best on getting these podcasts out to you and making them interesting, so that you enjoy them. That's the best part, right?
Right.
So, Janice, thanks for co-hosting this series with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's been fun.
It has.
Well, until next time, lead with integrity. The whole world needs you to lead with integrity. Take care.
That's a wrap for this podcast of Money In, Money Out. Thanks for listening. Be sure to write down the most valuable tip you learned today so you don't forget it. And remember, you can find out more about all the valuable books and services Susan has to offer at www.susangunnsolutions.com.